Silence hangs heavy here, thick and cold as the mist that clings to this water's skin, oppresses down, suffocating the light, blurring the edges of the world. Look closely beneath this glassy, gray mirror. Shadows stir, not reflections, but memories trapped in the deep. The ghostly outline of timber beams, blackened by time and water. The stubborn suggestion of a palisade, like broken teeth pushing up from the muddy grave. This is not nature's work. This water is a shroud, deliberately drawn. This is Villeneuve sous Charquemont, not vanished, it's drowned by the decree of a lord who desired not subjects, but fish, who saw not hearths and homes, but the potential for a pond, a symbol of his dominion over land and life. Descend with me now, not through the cold water, but through the colder currents of time. Listen, beneath the quiet gurgle of the depths. Can you hear it? The sharp, sudden splash as a clay water jug slips from calloused hands, shattering on packed earth, a sound now replaced only by the slow, different rise of bubbles from the unseen silt below. Hear the rhythmic, defiant clank-clink of the blacksmith's hammer on glowing iron, shaping plowshares, mending hinges, the heartbeat of the village, now muffled into a dull, distant thud, swallowed by the weight of water. Smell the rich, earthy tank of turned soil in the vegetable plots, the warm, pungent aroma of goats and sheep in their pens, the wood smoke curling from 100 humble chimneys, all gone, replaced by the damp, hollow scent of decay, of wood, slowly softening into pulp of stone-weeping minerals into the stagnant dark. Life, vibrant and demanding, replaced by the slow, patient rot of oblivion. See this? A bucket, just a bucket. Oak staves held fast by rusted iron bands. Perhaps it hauled water from the well for Marguerite's stew. Perhaps young Pierre used it to carry scraps to the pigs. A mundane tool, utterly ordinary. Now it bobs, trapped between the drowned world and the indifferent sky, a warped relic, a silent scream made of wood. It holds not water, but the profound weight of absence. It is the last witness, the final floating fragment of 1,000 ordinary days erased. What words echoed in the Lord's drafty hall when the decree was sealed? Was it delivered with cold finality, a mere administrative stroke? Or was there argument? Did the steward, perhaps, clear his throat, voice thin with unease, pointing to the names on the rent roll, the fields yielding good barley? Did the Lord's gaze, hard as flint, sweep over the map, lingering not on the clustered dots marking peasant hovels, but on the pleasing blue oval his new fish pond would form? Progress, he might have murmured. Improvement. For him, law was his. The land was his. The people were his, as surely as the deer in his forest or the stones in his quarry. Their lives, their histories, their labors, calculable only in the silver they brought, or the space they occupied. In this space was better suited to fattening carp for his table. And then, the rising. Not a sudden flood, but a creeping, relentless invasion. Day by day, the stream dammed higher. Day by day, the water, cold and pitiless, seeped into root cellars, flooded garden plots, pooled in the ruts of the single street. The villagers watched, first with disbelief, then with a dawning horror that chilled the blood, colder than the encroaching water. They saw their world dissolving. The stone foundation of Jayin, the mason's cottage, laid with such pride, vanished beneath the gray. The newly thatched roof of the widow Clothold's cottage, still smelling sweetly of reeds, became an island. Then a memory, the communal bread oven, its stones still warm from the morning's loaves, silenced forever. The air must have crackled then, not with bird song, but with curses. Low, guttural whispers at first, born of shock, then louder, fiercer, spat towards the manor on the hill, unseen but omnipresent. Curses breathed into the damp air. Curses carried on the wind that couldn't dry their tears. Curses etched onto their hearts with the acid of utter powerlessness. May his fish rot in his throat. May his pond freeze to the bottom. May his lion wither like grass in a drought. Impotent rage against the immovable mountain of feudal privilege. What use were curses against stone walls and men-at-arms? They gathered what meager possessions they could carry: a sack of grain, a treasured iron pot, a carved wooden spoon, a swaddled infant. They turned their backs on the rising water, on the hearthstones vanishing beneath the surface, on the graves of their ancestors already submerged, exiles in their own land, trudging towards an uncertain future, leaving only ripples where their lives had been. Now look, the mist is gone. The water lies placid, undisturbed. A perfect, cruel mirror reflecting the indifferent sky. It gives nothing back of what it took. No chimneys break its surface. No laughter disturbs its stillness. It holds its secrets close, this man-made sea. Beneath that deceptively calm surface lie choked streets, silt-filled hearts, the splintered bones of homes, lives interrupted, stories cut short. A whole community, a tapestry of generations, unraveled and sunk into the mud. The water is a lid slammed shut on Villeneuve's Sharkman. It speaks only in silences now, the silence of the absent. Blacksmith's hammer, the silence of children's feet no longer running on the path. The silence of prayers no longer whispered in a small, damp chapel. The silence of utter erasure. Only the heron remains, a stoic guardian on the shore. Does it remember the village that was? Or does it simply see the water and the fish that swim where people once lived? The surface gives no sign. It simply is. A testament to the ease with which power can reshape the world. It's consigning lesser lives to darkness, to silence, to the forgetting depths. A deliberate act, written not in chronicles of war, but in the quiet, terrible language of water over stone, of mud over memory. And as the ripples fade, leaving only this perfect, empty mirror, one wonders, what other villages lie sleeping beneath the still surfaces of the world? What other lives were traded for a lord's convenience, a king's vanity, an empire's progress? The water holds its tongue, but the land remembers. The stones, buried deep, remember? And the echoes of those curses, breathed into the wind centuries ago, still whisper, somewhere just beyond the edge of hearing. The true cost of such power is measured not in silver, but in silence. And this silence is profound. Silence is broken here, shattered by the ocean's endless fury. This wind doesn't whisper, it howls, a beast from the deep Atlantic, scouring the rock, tearing at the very air. It carries the biting salt sting, the raw, wet chill that seeps into marrow. Look up, not to a lord's castle on a hill, but to fate's fortress on the edge of the world. Stone fingers clawing at the storm-laden sky. These beehive huts, huddled like sheep against a wolf gale, are Skellig Michael, a sanctuary chosen not for comfort, but for its brutal, purifying edge. Here, men didn't flee rising water. They sought the precipice. They didn't drown. They chose to hang suspended, 600 feet above the devouring sea. Closer to God, they believed, by being utterly exposed to his creation's raw, indifferent power. Ascend with them. Feel the vertigo clawing at your belly. Each step on these wind-polished stairs is an act of defiance, a prayer carved in muscle and fear. The stone is cold, eternally damp, slick underfoot. One misstep, one gust, stronger than faith. And the hungry sea waits, patient and roaring. Smell the iron tang of the spray, the sharp ozone of the storm, the faint, earthy scent of wet wool from a monk's coarse habit, soaked through. Listen beyond the wind's shriek, the frantic cries of nesting gannets, a ceaseless choir of alarm, echoing off the cliffs. Below, the boom and hiss of waves gnawing at the island's roots. This was the path to devotion. Not through quiet cloisters, but over a threshold of sheer terror every single day. Did they feel the pull of the void? Did their hearts hammer like trapped birds against their ribs as they climbed, eyes fixed on the next precarious handhold, not daring to look down? Their faith was a physical thing, forged in the crucible of this relentless exposure. Inside the stone womb, the roar becomes a deep, resonant thrum. The air is thick with the smell of damp stone, fish oil from the lamp, the dry dust of vellum, and the underlying, ever-present salt. Cold seeps from the walls, a chill that no meager peat, fire can truly banish. Hands, stiff with cold, moved by the weak, guttering light. A quill scratches across treated calfskin. Toya, inatorium, meum intend. Oh God, come to my assistance. ... Each letter is a battle fought against the dark, against the cold, against the distraction of the world's end, howling just beyond the thin stone skin. What inner landscape sustained them? Was it pure, burning devotion, or a deeper, more desperate need to impose order, beauty, the word of God, onto this chaotic, threatening canvas? The illuminated capital taking shape under the trembling hand, a riot of intertwined beasts in vibrant colors, feels like an act of rebellion, shout of defiant beauty against the howling gray. They sought God not in ease, but in the deliberate embrace of hardship, believing the sheer physical struggle mirrored the soul's battle against sin. Hunger was a companion, a cold, a discipline, the ever-present threat of the fall, a reminder of mortality's swift edge. Then, the crossing. Not water, but air. A yawning gulf where the rock itself seems to have been torn apart by the wind's fury, spanning it. Ropes, frayed in salt, stiffened, lashed to uncertain anchors. Wooden slats, worn smooth by fearful feet, slick now with driven spray. The Christ's Bridge, they called it. A name heavy with fatalistic hope. To cross, it was to walk directly into the maw of the storm, the wind tearing at the habit, trying to pluck the pilgrim from the rock and dash him onto the black teeth below. The bridge bucks and sways like a living thing. Every step is an act of surrender, a whispered prayer carried away on the gale before it even leaves the lips. Did they close their eyes? Did they fix their gaze on the stone arch ahead, a symbol of heaven's gate, ignoring the sucking void beneath? The rope burns into the clutching hand. The heart pounds a frantic rhythm against the ribs. This wasn't just a path, it was a gauntlet, a daily confrontation with oblivion, endured for the promise of a peace that must have felt as distant as the mainland shore, shrouded in mist. The discipline here was iron, forged not just in prayer, but in the constant grinding resistance to elemental terror. Isolation wasn't just physical, it was a wall built of wind and water, sealing them off from the world of men, leaving only God and the abyss. The sun bleeds out over the western ocean, staining the churning water crimson and bruised purple. It catches for a fleeting moment on the wet curve of a beehive roof, a fleeting fiery jewel on the crown of this grim rock. The wind shows no mercy, still screams its ancient fury around the stones, testing the monks' resolve. It's testing the very mortars binding their world together. They endured, not through might, but through the sheer, stubborn persistence of their faith. A flickering rush lamp held against the immensity of the dark and the deep. They sought God on the edge of the world and found him, or found only the echo of their own endurance in the wind's endless roar. The answer lies buried with their bones in the thin, stony soil. But the legacy remains, not in sunken timbers, but in words painstakingly copied in the flickering dark, in the defiant geometry of stone built against the void. They traded the warmth of the valley the murmur of community for this wind-scoured altar. They vanished, not beneath water, but into the consuming mists of time and legend, leaving behind only these silent, stoic stones and the relentless, questioning cry of the gulls. Silence can be a weapon, a suffocating shroud. Here, before the last bastion of Byzantium, it presses down, thick and cloying, like wet wool over the face. The water lies still, too still, reflecting the sky, stained with the color of a fresh wound. Look upon Theodosia's walls, titanic, scarred by centuries of defiance, yet suddenly, it's fragile. They rise not as protection, but as a stark line drawn against annihilation. The city huddles behind them, a jewel dimmed its 1,000 churches, holding their breath. This silence isn't absence, it's the gathering of the storm. It's the scrape of countless whetstones on Turkish steel just beyond the horizon, the muffled tread of 70,000 feet on dry earth, the silent prayers of 50,000 souls waiting for the world to end. The air crackles with unsaid terror. The taste is metallic fear on the tongue, the ghost of blood yet to be spilled. Constantinople waits. It has waited for years. Now, the waiting is almost over. The silence is the last fragile skin over the drum of doom. Then, world cracks open, not with a shriek, but with a roar that tears the silence apart. A sound felt deep in the bone, a physical blow. Basilica speaks. A gout of flame vomits from its iron throat. A stone, the weight of a laden cart house, hurtles through the air, impossibly slow, then terrifyingly fast. It strikes the ancient wall, near the gate of St. Romanus. The impact isn't just sound, a tick convulsion explodes outward in a choking cloud. Stone screams as it shears, fractures, cascades downward in an avalanche of shattered history. Inside the city, the tremor runs through the very roots of buildings. Plaster dust sifts down from ceilings like gray snow. Icons rattle on their stands. A scream, raw and sudden, pierces the momentary deafness left by the blast, quickly swallowed by the rising cacophony. Smell it now. Acrid gunpowder smoke drifting over the walls, sharp and sulfurous, mixing with the oldest scent of dust, sweat, and the damp stone of cisterns. The siege has truly begun. Not with skirmishes, but with the hammer of God wielded by mortal hands. This is the sound of the future arriving, brutal and uncompromising against the desperate, crumbling past. Days blur into nights painted in fire and shadow. The thunder of the great guns is a constant companion, a maddening heartbeat shaking the world. Stones rain down, not just from bombards now, but from catapults, mangonels, a relentless, grinding hail. The air is thick with the grit of pulverized stone, the stench of sweat and fear, and the ever-present tang of smoke. On the walls, men move like ghosts in the flickering torchlight, their faces masks of exhaustion etched in grime and desperation. They patch breaches with timber, rubble, furniture torn from nearby homes, even the bodies of the fallen. There is no rest, only the watch, the repair, the frantic scan of the firelit darkness beyond for the sign of the final assault. Voices are hoarse shouts swallowed by the din. Prayers are muttered, not to saints, but to the stone itself. Hold, just hold. Beneath the walls, in cellars and cisterns, women and children huddle. The sound here is different. The low moan of prayers, the stifled sobs of a child, the crackle of a single candle guttering in the damp. They hear the impacts above like blows on a coffin lid. The city is a body under siege, bleeding stone dust, its spirit fraying with every earth-shattering crash. The Turks are not just outside. Their presence is a crushing weight, a shadow that seeps through the very cracks in the walls. Its hunger begins to gnaw. Hope, that stubborn candle, flickers lower. Then, The flood breaks, not water, but men. Fire and fury given human form. Under the sickly gray light just before dawn, when exhaustion has worn the defenders to their thinnest edge, the air splits with the sound not of this earth. The chilling war cry of the Sultan's Janissaries rises above the bombardment, a wave of pure, terrifying sound crashing against the walls. Drums thunder like frantic hearts. Cymbals clash like breaking bones. And then the tide. Thousands upon thousands, a human torrent lit by flickering torches, surging towards the wounded sections of the wall. The breach becomes a mouth of hell, and men meet in a screaming, stabbing, hacking frenzy. Steel rings on steel, bites into wood, tears through flesh. The air fills with the coppery reek of blood, the stench of voided bowels, the choking smoke of Greek fire and Turkish grenades. It's not battle, it's butchery in close confines, mosaic of horror. Defender's face frozen in a final gasp as a scimitar finds his throat. A janissary falling backwards, clutching at the crossbow bolt embedded in his eye. Hands slipping in gore on the crumbling stones. The defenders fight with the mad strength of the doomed, knowing what falls with this city. Faith, heritage, 1,000 years of empire. They fight for the ghost of Rome itself, but the tide is too strong, the breach too wide. Step by bloody step, they are pushed back. The tide cannot be stemmed. The cry goes up, ragged and despairing, echoing through the narrow streets, even above the din. The city is taken. Panic, cold and absolute, floods the veins of Constantinople. People run, stumble, fall, a terrified river flowing towards the only perceived sanctuary, the vast golden heart of the city, the Hagia Sophia. Side, the great church, under the dome that once seemed to hold up heaven itself. The air thrums with terror. Thousands pressed together, their faces upturned, not to the mosaics of Christ's Pantocrator, but towards the massive bronze doors. The scent is thick, incense, sweat, fear, the sour tang of hopelessness. Priests chant the liturgy, their voices cracking, a fragile dam against the rising tide of dread. The prayers swell, a desperate chorus. Kyrie eleison, Lord have mercy. Children whimper. An old woman rocks back and forth, clutching a small, painted icon to her chest. The sunlight streaming through the high windows feels suddenly accusatory, illuminating the dust of centuries stirred by their frantic footsteps. They pray for a miracle, for the walls to mend, for the Virgin to descend and shield them. But the sounds from outside change. The clash of steel grows nearer, sharper. He shouts in an alien tongue, the heavy, rhythmic thudding against the very doors of the church. The prayers falter. Single, high-pitched scream cuts through the chanting. The light streaming through the dome seems to dim, as if heaven itself is turning away. The miracle does not come. Only the sound of splintering wood. Heat, a physical weight pressing down, leaching the moisture from your eyes, your throat, your very thoughts. The air shimmers like molten glass, distorting the ruins that rise, mirage-like, from the ocean of sand. Look upon these bones, not shattered by cannon or swallowed by waves, but picked clean by time and indifference. This was Merv, not a city defeated, but a city relinquished. The queen of the world, they called her, where 100 tongues bartered silk and spice under vaulted bazaars. Now, only the dunes pay court, lapping at her broken walls like a lazy, golden tide. The silence isn't oppressive. It's profound, empty. The silence of a stage after the players have all departed, leaving only the crumbling scenery behind. The air tastes of dust, ancient, pervasive, gritty on the tongue, and something else. It's a phantom scent of cinnamon and camel. Dung, long since baked away by centuries of sun. This vanishing wasn't a single, brutal act. It was an unraveling, a slow, relentless letting go. Step into the ghost of her grandeur. Feel the grit beneath your feet, not paving stones, but the desert patiently reclaiming its own. The scale is staggering, humbling. Arches that once framed bustling caravans now frame only emptiness in the blinding sky. Touch the wall. The brick is furnace hot, leached of color, its surface pitted by the scouring wind. Here, in this buried courtyard, a fragment of mosaic winks up, a splash of stubborn blue, a curve of green that once formed a mythical bird, whose skilled hands laid these tiny stones, whose eyes admired their brilliance under the dappled light of a shaded colonnade. The air, thick with heat, seems to hold the echo of haggling voices, the jingle of harness bells, the distant call to prayer from a minaret, now reduced to a jagged stump. But listen closer, only the hiss. It's the endless, whispering hiss of sand, settling, shifting, filling the void left by departed lives. The scent of prosperity, rose water, baking bread, hot metal from the coppersmith's quarter has long surrendered to the sterile, ancient smell of sun-baked earth. Grandeur bleached away, leaving only the skeleton, slowly being buried. Deeper still, in the intimate spaces, the silence becomes personal. Not the silence of empires, but of a single snuffed candle. A child's toy horse, legs snapped off, lies abandoned in the corner of a room where sand forms soft dunes against the walls. Was it dropped in haste? Forgotten in play? Sighted, a wooden spindle, its whirl smooth from a woman's touch, waits eternally for wool that will never come. Feel the dry, splintered wood. The air here is oven still, smelling only of sun-baked clay and centuries of dust. And here, a scrap of paper, miraculously preserved. The ink is faded, but legible. Elegant curves of Arabic script, perhaps a line of poetry copied by a diligent student, or the record of a debt owed for a bolt of Samarkand silk. A whisper of ordinary life, frozen in the moment before the leaving. What prompted that final departure? Was it the slow death of the canals, choked by silt and neglect, turning the fertile oasis into dust? Was it the shifting winds of trade, the caravans finding safer, richer paths, leaving Merv a backwater? Or was it the creeping shadow of the Mongols, a distant rumor that finally made staying seem like waiting for the executioner? The reasons blur, lost like the paths through the dunes. What remains are these small, silent testaments: the broken toy, the idle spindle, the unfinished thought on paper. The unraveling began with the threads of commerce, the lifeblood drying up. Then, the threads of community frayed as families sought water, safety, a future elsewhere. Finally, the threads of memory itself began to loosen. Beyond the city walls, the dead keep their vigil. A necropolis, vast as the city itself, a forest of baked earth tombs and crumbling mausoleums. The wind, rising now with the cooling air, sighs through broken domes and empty arches, a mournful chorus. The elaborate terracotta faces adorning some tombs, once fierce guardians. Serene saints have been scoured by the desert's breath into eerie, eyeless masks, whose hands carved these protectors. Its bones lie beneath this shifting sand, guarded now only by the wind and the indifferent stars. The silence here is deeper, older. It's the silence of generations who lived, loved, traded, prayed, and died believing Merv was eternal. Their guardians stare blindly as the sand drifts over their feet, reclaiming them inch by patient inch. The city didn't fall. It faded, like a pattern woven into silk, left too long in the sun. The vibrant colors simply bleached away. The knots holding it together loosened, one by one, until the whole magnificent tapestry dissolved into separate, meaningless threads, scattered and buried. The wind still sighs through Merv's broken arches. The water still hides Villeneuve's sorrows. The sea still claws at Dunwich's bones. A tease are not just ruins. Goose whispers carried on the desert breeze, rising from the drowned depths, echoing in the hollows where faith once clung to cliffs. They are the stark, silent testament to the fragile architecture of human endeavor. Empires rise, cities bloom, lives are lived in vibrant details. And then the slow unraveling. Conquest, decay, the shifting earth, the rising tide, the Lord's cold decree, or simply time's patient, indifferent hand. We build our monuments, our walls, our sanctuaries, believing in permanence. Yet the stones themselves tell a different story. They speak of impermanence, of civilizations that shone bright, then vanished, leaving only riddles etched in dust, in water, in silence. They remind us that all things, glory, faith, power, home, are ultimately borrowed from the relentless current of history. We walk upon forgotten worlds. We are the future's ghosts, tend to the silence. It holds the memory of everything lost. Remember them. If these lost worlds and the echoes of those who lived within them have resonated with you, if you feel the weight of their silence and the pull of their stories, like this video, subscribe to the channel. Your support is the torch that helps us continue exploring the shadows of history, bringing these vanished voices back from the brink of oblivion. Help us ensure these stories are not lost to the dunes of time.